It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today, well, it's the Arundel Rivers Federation. It's a new group, but you know both of these guests. They've been here before. Jesse Iliff, he's the South Riverkeeper, and Jeff Holland, the West and Rhode Riverkeeper. They will be joining forces. The new organization will be known as the Arundel Rivers Federation. Thank you for joining me today, guys.
Thank you, Donna.
Hi, thanks for having us, Donna.
And just to clarify, this is going to happen as of January 1st. So we're not quite there yet, but isn't it a great idea?
We're completely excited. Who came up with this? Jeff, you want to take credit? Jesse, you want to take credit? Or was this just both of you had this idea at the same moment?
I'll call it kismet. The stars aligned.
I love the word kismet.
We actually followed the sample of the groups on the Eastern Shore who conglomerated into the Shore Rivers organization. So they've got 4 Riverkeepers and share administration. And that was our model. It just seemed to make so much sense, and it's working well for them after a year. And so that's what we shaped our organization by.
Jesse, you're nodding your head. You're completely in agreement. This wasn't strong-armed on you.
This is all true.
Geographically speaking, it makes sense also. The South, West, and Rhode Rivers are all geographically in the same area. They all flow into the Chesapeake Bay. They're running north to south. You have the South, the West, and right off the west, the road, yes?
That's true. And then we're also considering expanding southward toward Herring Bay. And so we'll be taking a look at the Rockhole Creek and the other areas that feed into the Herring Bay area. And also, you can't forget the shoreline of the Chesapeake Bay from Thomas Point all the way down to Herring Bay.
Yeah, and what's interesting, you just said it before the interview started, if you're on both sides of the Mayo Peninsula.
That's correct, and we understand that the county is about to expand building permits there, and there could be as many as 700 new structures going up on that little peninsula. And in addition to the traffic problems and the other overcrowding issues, there's an issue of expanded impervious surface, and then the construction phase with all of the potential sediment pollution. So there's going to be a lot of activity that's going to need a lot of oversight.
If I don't stop you on the 700 new permits, the people from the Mayo Peninsula are like, what were you thinking? Can you please tell me what that's all about?
Well, actually, it's wonderful to see that the homeowners organizations and the other civic groups on the Mayo Peninsula have really banded together to form their own ideas on how that should happen, and so that's very encouraging.
Is that a reflection of the new water treatment facility that these permits are coming up? Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So Mayo was formerly all on septic and was limited by perk testing to how many lots could be developed. But when the new sewer line went in under the South River, it funneled the sewage from the Mayo Peninsula to the Annapolis wastewater treatment plant down off of Edgewood Road and expanded the capacity of more units on the peninsula.
So because the wastewater treatment plant in the Mayo was limited, there was a building moratorium. And since that is no longer the case, since that plant has become redundant, and they lifted the building moratorium, and boom, we're going to have more building.
Speaking of the sewer line underneath the South River, have you seen any issues with it? I mean, I know there was concern, maybe it was just by me, that something would happen, and have you seen any issues with it?
No, not so far. I mean, this pipeline's only been online for a little over a year, maybe a year and a half, so it would be a real failure of design if it were already breaking down on us. But no, thankfully we haven't seen any significant impacts from that pipeline, except during construction when there were wide open areas. There were some sediment escapes like in Quiet Waters Park and stuff like that, but nothing in the way of a rupture that's spewing lots of sewage into the river.
Well, there's good news.
Yeah.
And then we've been doing extra readings of data along the Rhode River up to Bear Neck Creek up to the right across Route 214 from the water treatment plant. From there all the way down to the former outflow pipe at Dutchman Point near Camp Labana at the mouth of the Rhode River. And so we'll be analyzing that data over the winter to see if there's any difference after the plant closed.
Going back to joining forces, this will start on January 1st. Personnel changes, you guys are both still on board.
Yep, both of us are going to continue in our respective roles as South Riverkeeper for me, West and Rhode Riverkeeper for Jeff, and there won't be any other staff changes. Jeff will maintain his office over at the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, but we'll both be pulling in the same direction.
How did I not know that you were there? I was just there the other day hiking around.
Well, you should have stopped by and seen my new office.
I did. Is it new? It's a new office.
Yes, we moved there in March.
Okay.
And it's been such an incredible benefit. Just there are 200 brains to pick there. Just these brilliant scientists doing world-renowned research 10 miles away from downtown Annapolis that nobody ever heard about.
I know, it's amazing. They've been on the show, and as I was walking back into the visitor center, I saw a plant on the ground, and it said Russian something, and I'm like, there it is. They're studying Russian plants right here on the Rhode River.
That's true. So we've already begun to do some interesting projects in tandem. We're working with our Marylanders Grow Oysters program, and we are working with the Citizen Scientist program at CERC to study the spat as it grows over the course of the winter on the ends of individual homeowners' docks. And then we'll count them again before we place them in the oyster sanctuary in Glebe Bay in the South River. And we've done various numbers of adult oyster shells set with spat in each of the cages, and so we'll be able to determine which of those quantities promotes growth and decreases mortality, and then we'll be able to actually count the number of oysters we're planting in the spring. And
so important to the rivers and to the bay because?
Well, of course, oysters are filter feeders, and when John Smith sailed by our rivers 400 years ago, there were enough oysters in the bay to filter every drop of water every 3 days. That's 18 trillion gallons of water. Every adult oyster can filter a whole bathtub full of water every day. So the more we can promote the resurgence of the oyster population, the better the health of the bay will be. We have the other advantage in the West and Rhode Rivers and somewhat in the South that we have a number of watermen who are engaged in oyster aquaculture. And so one of the studies we hope to conduct with CERC is to figure out how to eliminate the diseases that impact oysters over the course of their lifetime, so we can help promote this aquaculture program. And help the watermen succeed, which helps us all. Help the bay succeed as well.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, more about this merger and what's next. This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. I'm in the studio with Jesse Iliff. He's the South Riverkeeper. And Jeff Holland, he's the West and Rhode Riverkeeper. They will be joining forces. The new organization will be known as the Arundel Rivers Federation. The idea was they could get more done together than they did apart. Sharing services, administration, doing bigger and better restoration projects in those three rivers. And you, Jeff mentioned going south down towards Harrington Harbor, I guess?
Herring Bay. Yeah.
Herring Bay. And they reach more people and greater political influence together than apart. And this relationship is not new. They didn't just meet each other. Jesse?
Yeah, so apart from being neighbors for the past several years, Jeff and I have worked together, and our organizations have worked together on a number of projects for a while now. Jeff earlier in the program touched on how the Marylanders Grow Oysters program has oyster spat on shell planted in the South River. We also have done restoration projects together in the West and Rhode watersheds, and we've had what we hope to be the first of many annual events at Mayo Park that was a great success in June, called our Splash Series, and we had over 600 people come out.
That was on Father's Day, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And so, we've already been working together on a lot of projects in the past, and this is going to make that easier and more effective.
In fact, we just completed a project project at Holly Hill Harbor, which is on the upper branches or upper end of the Mayo Peninsula. And that is that whole project was a result of 10 years of our data gathering on our water quality monitoring project. Mm-hmm. We noticed that that point, the dock off of the beach of the Holly Hill Harbor Community Pier, was the hot spot for our bacteria monitoring. And also we noticed that there was a good deal of sediment and nutrient pollution running off of that community property. And so we worked together with a group at South River Federation to get funding from the Chesapeake Bay Trust as well as the Department of Natural Resources to create essentially a giant rain garden, a series of best management practices that slow down the stormwater runoff, let it soak into the ground, and just this coming week we'll be planting that area with native trees and shrubs that the roots will hold the soil in place and the plants will absorb the excess nutrients. And we're planting that with kids from St. Anne's School in Annapolis.
Wonderful. Is that what you identified as the problem with causing these issues?
The problem was the stormwater.
Okay.
And the stormwater was coming straight off about an 11-acre area. And the bacteria source could have been geese. It could have been people not cleaning up after their
blame
dogs.
the birds.
It could have been.
Jeff!
That's true. Every goose poops a pound a day.
I get it.
Yeah, it happens.
Right.
So in any case, we'll be monitoring this site over the course of the next couple of years to see that what we have created there will actually solve that problem.
Dead zones, where are you both finding them still?
We actually didn't find any dead zones.
That's
the last
huge.
Several years. The dissolved oxygen levels have been relatively good.
Yeah, for us in the South, we didn't see dead zones expanding over any horizontal area. We found dead zones within the water column. So during the hottest part of the summer, there were several places in the South River that once you got below 2 meters of depth, there was very little, if any, oxygen. So all the fish that needed to get through those areas would need to be close to the surface. The problem with that is we also saw surface water temperatures in excess of 90 degrees.
Right.
So it puts a squeeze on the aquatic life when you can't breathe down deep and you can't exist because it's too hot up in the shallows. So they have a really narrow path to try and forage through the water in those places.
All right, let's take another short break. When we come back, more about what lies ahead. How did the Conowingo Dam release affect these three rivers? This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. I'm in the studio today with Jesse Iliff. He's the South Riverkeeper, and Jeff Holland, the West and Rhode Riverkeeper. They'll be joining forces in January. Not to put all the blame on Exelon, but what we saw
we can blame Exelon. That's okay.
When Conowingo opened its gates, a lot of debris came downriver, and we're downriver. Jesse, did it affect much on the South River?
Well, it's hard to say how much of an effect it might have had on water quality or the suitability of the water for aquatic life, but we certainly saw large volumes of debris. There were trees that were almost as long as my 22-foot boat. There were lots of pieces of lumber and dislodged pieces of piers, and we saw lots of playing balls and shoes and plastic.
That's just what you saw. You don't know what's underneath. We're still going to come up. Yeah. Jeff?
Well, along the end of the Mayo Peninsula, we saw a lot of debris build up. And one of the wonderful outcomes of that was that there's a group of young high school students who have been banding together as the Clean Creeks Football Club. And this one young man has gotten all of his soccer team together and their friends, and they go around in canoes and kayaks and pick up trash off the shorelines of the rivers and the creeks.
I love it. I'm amazed. And this wasn't anything you put together. This was
totally out of the blue. So they came together to clean up the beach along the end of the Mayo Peninsula in one of the communities and filled dumpsters full of, here are kids picking up logs and running across the lawn to throw them into these dumpsters. It was inspiring to see. The county executive was there, and he was amazed. But at date alone, they fulfilled their 5,000th pound of trash that they've removed over the past 2 summers.
That's wonderful. It really is wonderful. Okay, to put the blame on Exelon, is this something, do either of you both have a lot of experience, whether Jesse in litigation, both of you in watching the rivers and watching the health of the water. What's to do here?
Well, so Exelon was recently awarded a water quality certification by the state of Maryland that said that they were able to use the dam to generate hydropower for the next 50 years, and that they needed to take certain steps to ensure that downstream water quality was preserved.
And that power is important.
Sure. I mean, everybody needs electricity, and hydro is a renewable source of electricity. It's better than oil and gas, but it has a lot of problems too, and it certainly affects the upstream areas that are flooded. Now, for Conowingo, this is all ancient history. The dam was built over 80 years ago, and nobody remembers really what it was like before the dam was there.
Right.
But either way, Exelon thought that the conditions the state put on the certification were too onerous, and so they sued. They appealed the conditions that were a part of the permit, and they took that appeal up in circuit court, which that case has been dismissed for failure to exhaust administrative remedies, and we can, get into the weeds about that. But Riverkeepers Chesapeake, the umbrella organization that services all of our keeper organizations throughout the Chesapeake, there are 17 of us now, intervened in the federal lawsuit brought by Exelon to say not only was the state's permit reasonable, but in fact it didn't go far enough. One of the big shortcomings of that permit, in our view, is that it doesn't require them to address the sedimentation behind the dam. There are factors about nutrient removal and factors about handling of the trash, but the trash is really window dressing. The main issue is the nutrients and the sediment.
So you're holding them to task?
We're trying. I mean, we will see how that lawsuit goes, but Riverkeepers Chesapeake is definitely right there in the thick of it.
So that's an example of how not only are we working together as the larger our two
umbrella
organizations, but we're part of a larger organization that covers the whole 64,000 square miles of the Chesapeake Bay watershed on the larger issues that don't necessarily directly impact our watersheds, but it's something that we can contribute to that will have a bigger impact over the broader watershed.
Okay, how about egos? Do egos get in the way with joining forces here?
Never. Impossible.
Jesse, you answered that very quickly.
He's always like that. I hate it.
Okay, guys, what am I missing? Legislative session ahead. Jesse, what's on the agenda?
Well, that's a great question. One thing that I really want to push this year is a bill that will require local jurisdictions that have been delegated authority to enforce erosion and sediment control regulations to report on what their enforcement efforts look like. There are 22 in the state that have the power to enforce sediment and erosion control for construction sites. And those delegated jurisdictions, and Arundel County is one of them, as is the city of Annapolis, should be letting the Department of Environment know what they're doing pursuant to that authority. I feel like this is a common sense measure. It's not actually requiring them to do anything different. It's just requiring them to express what they've done.
CC on an email.
Pretty much. And that report would go to the Department of Environment and to the General Assembly. So
you're asking government agencies to speak to one another?
Yes.
Okay. Jeff, you're laughing?
It's possible. Well, you notice this little label I have on my, did it fall off? My vote sticker fell off.
Oh, no. But we get it.
Just go vote again.
Okay. I'll get another one.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Was there something you wanted to add?
I just wanted to say that we are totally nonpartisan, but when you're thinking of who to vote for, look at their environmental record. We're here to promote our environment and to promote sane and responsible environmental legislation.
Hear, hear.
Jesse and Jeff, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Donna.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.